Welcome to the Alternative Leader podcast. My name is Mary Williams and I'm the Mind Architect. I'm also founder of the Alternative Lead Academy and author of It Begins With You. This podcast is dedicated to inspiring the leaders of today to lead with intention, both in their personal and their professional lives. My guests from across the world share their challenges, their knowledge and their experiences so that we can learn from these powerful insights to help us lead with strength, determination and compassion. Welcome to the Alternative Leader podcast. My name is Mary Williams and I'm your host. Today's guest is Hannah Walker. Hannah is a personal trainer who, after going from stresses and struggles in her own life, began physically training. It was after seeing just how much that physical training changed not only her health and fitness, but her mindset that she set up her own business, Eton Fitness. Eton Fitness focuses on one-to-one online programs in her The Empowered Female program. Not only does Hannah focus on getting those females fit, she also includes education surrounding hormones, training and nutrition. The majority of the women that she works with are in perimenopause. Hannah is here to share with us the struggles and the successes that she went through to start her own business and to share with you some of the skills, tips and tools that she uses with her clients. Hannah, thank you very much for coming on the podcast.
Thank you for having me.
And do you mind sort of starting us off on your personal journey a little bit about how you got into personal training and fitness? Why is that so important to you?
So when I first started getting fit, I didn't have a clue what I was doing. I was basically in the midst of a divorce. I had two young kids. So my daughter was 5, my son was 2. And it was genuinely a way just to get out of the house, which sounds awful, but it was anyone who's been divorced and in that kind of, it's like a pressure cooker. Like you are separated, but you're living in the same space and you are just waiting for the point that you can both live independently. So one of you tries to get out of the house more, or you try not to be in the house at the same time as each other. So that's what I was trying to do. So I would go for a little jog, and then I found this little area near our house. It was like this sort of grasslandy area, and it had these old benches, and it had like wooden poles with metal bars on. So there was like a chin-up bar, there were dip bars, and I really didn't know like what to do on any of that stuff. But as I ran past it a few times, there was like one of my neighbours was down there, so I would chat to him and copy a bit of what he was doing. And then this other guy was down there, he was really friendly. So it became like there was sort of, sometimes when I went, there was always somebody there, so I could sort of chat and copy them. And I didn't ever go into a gym at that point, but I would just use that little area. And it just became my sanity. It became my sort of escape. So I could just go to that little place and I just started doing little things, and I couldn't do them at first. And then I got a bit stronger, and then I got better at doing it. And then just the more that I did in a completely clueless fashion, there was no structure to this whatsoever other than, he's done that, I'm going to give that a go. Couldn't do it, obviously. Couldn't do chin-up bar. I was just like, yeah, let's give this a go. But then I started to be able to do them, and I got a lot stronger. And as I got physically stronger, I just felt a lot mentally stronger, and I felt like I could really sort of take on more of what was being thrown at me in amongst all of this sort of divorce situation and all the emotions that come with that, and all the hardships and the financial struggles and the big decisions that you have to make that not only affect you and your future, but your kids, and then the guilt that comes with that, and then everything that comes with that. I just felt like I was able to really clearly see like what I wanted mine and the kids' future to look like, what I would and wouldn't tolerate. So that physical strength led to just a mental strength, and I suppose a mental empowerment that I didn't know you could have, and I didn't know existed until that moment. And I was like, this is really powerful, because it put me in it's made me a different person. It put me in a different position. So that's where it all started. But it's grown. It's been a journey.
It's really funny. I think you're the only person I've ever met who's used those those exercise bars in the park. Because I know they put them into our park, and I think all of us kind of walk past and going, well, what are you meant to do with that?
So the
And they're
modern
good, aren't they?
the modern ones they put in, you just see all the kids playing on them, like the little ski things where they're like whizzing their legs around. But these were like old school, like made with wood and metal. So you had like the old school, like wooden pillars with the metal bars, and it was like some dip bars that you could then do press ups on and a chin up bar. So then I ended up buying myself like big looped elastic bands so I could take them and like teach myself to do chin ups. And yeah, it was really rustic, but yeah, it was my little sanctuary.
That's really interesting. I have to say, I'm amazed that you can do chin ups because I have a I don't know. There's a upper body, lower body thing that goes on with me, and I'm sitting in the gym with my 5 kilos on my chest press, and 27 with my feet, and sort of watching men thinking, please don't notice I'm on five. Please don't notice that.
Your 5 kilos will one day become like 8 kilos, and then it will become 10 kilos. And it's just such a gradual journey. I couldn't do the gym. I can only do 5, I think, unassisted now, and that would be at a push because those are like chin ups and press ups are two of the hardest exercises. And if you don't do them all the time, like they just show you up. So yeah, don't put yourself down. Everyone starts where they start, and it's all about where you grow from where you started. It's not about where you started. So don't compare.
So I have to say I've started logging it in a book, which makes me feel a bit cool and more male, because men always have their little log books, don't they? So I'm a bit like, I'm here with my logbook, you just can't see what I'm writing in it. And I just try and be really cool and be like, Mary, this is against yourself. You've got your logbook, you're writing it down. But I feel like I look a bit cooler because I've got it all written down. Anyway. So what led to the business then, from going up from sort of I'm trying to escape my divorce, and so how did that kind of become a business? What was that journey for you?
So in amongst all of that, I had been working a job in my previous, I suppose, I don't know what it was. Not sure it was much of a career. It was like I did lots of different jobs, so I didn't really have anything at that point in my early 20s that I was like, yes, I want to do that. I never grew up having that thing that I wanted to do. Like I never wanted to be a zoologist, or I never wanted to, work with animals. There wasn't like a specific thing. So
Yeah.
I suppose I was a bit lost maybe. So I did lots of secretarial work, I did lots of PA work, and I like really enjoyed that work. I really enjoyed it. I worked with some really interesting people. And I was working as I can't remember what the job title was, but basically within a team of people in a marketing agency, I helped them do lots of administration stuff and sort of help with team things. And yeah, I was basically administration within this company, but it meant that because the kids at the time, my daughter hadn't started school and my son was at nursery, they were both at nursery. I was rushing them to nursery to get to work on time. They were in different rooms at nursery. So one was on the top floor, one was on the bottom floor. They didn't see each other all day. I would then pick them up, rush them home to get them to bed. And I just caught myself one day, like walking along with the pusher, being like, hurry up, you just got to hurry up, hurry up, hurry up. Each way that we went was like, hurry up. I was like, oh my God, this is their life. Like, and this is my life. Like, I was like,
Yeah.
and it doesn't work. Like, it didn't work. I was earning enough money, but not like anything wildly significant for that to be worthwhile. So I just started to think to myself, like, this juggle isn't working. And Evie was about to start school. And I just thought, I am then going to be governed by a 9 till 3 o'clock. And how on earth am I going to work that round at 9 till 5 o'clock when nursery was like 8 till 6 o'clock? I was like, how is any of this going to work? Like, which I think is the juggle for so many women and parents in the UK. We're not like Scandinavia where we make the hours fit, which would be really sensible. Yeah, so I had a few friends who were PTs at the time. I'd obviously got this invested interest in empowerment and this sort of real mental power from training. And I just thought, I wonder, like, if that's something I could do. Could I do that? Could I qualify? Could I build up a business? And so they had, I started looking into the qualifications, and they had a sale with a company called Future Fit. They had a New Year sale, and it took about £1,500 off the overall price of qualifying for your level 3 personal trainer qualification. So I was like, right, it's now or never, I have to do it. So that January, I think it was January 2015, I signed up and I was like, right. And so it was remote learning. And then I would go into London to do the exams and do the courses and the practical courses. So when my son, Austin, would go to sleep, because he was still really little, if he had a nap, I was straight downstairs, a laptop open, trying to do all these modules, like getting everything done, like booking in weekends with their dad when I was like, I will be in London this weekend. I've got exams or I've got practical or whatever. And then qualified and then started my business, I think, in that November. But that first year was us moving out and us getting settled and us setting ourselves up as just the kids as I got divorced. So there wasn't a lot of focus on the business, but I did start building clients. And then it really did start building like from the ground up. Like I didn't, you don't start with a bank of clients. So I couldn't afford to go and work in a gym because I couldn't afford the monthly gym rents, or I couldn't afford like, the person cost per person, because that came in at, I think it was like £12 per person per hour that you would have to pay the gym to train. But then that's £12 off the money that I would need. So yeah. So I started training my clients in parks. So we did outdoor training, and then I grew like a group of clients that way. And then I got lots of referrals, and I trained loads of the mums in the area. And then I would train a mum in the area who would then refer me to all of her what they called like postnatal groups, and then I would get more of those mums. And so it grew, like my reputation kind of grew, and I gravitate, well, no, I don't think the word gravitate is quite right, but what's the word where you like go into you sort of, what's
You're asking the wrong person, because I've got terrible perimenopause, brain fog.
I just sort of ended up, I can't think of the word.
Yeah, I can't think of the word either. Transitioning.
Well, yeah, I think so. I just ended up realizing that you attract like for like. So I was never going to attract a 19-year-old lad that wanted to go and do bodybuilding, because I wasn't, in my 20s. Well, I was, I suppose, late 20s. I wasn't, a bodybuilder like of his age. So I started attracting mums and women of my age, which is how obviously it's now developed into a lot of women in midlife, in perimenopause and menopause. And then it got to a point where I had a big enough client base to go into a gym and pay some gym rents. And then I worked in a couple of gyms, I think. And then it was like working 30 hours a week on the gym floor, which I could then, being my own boss and managing my own business, I could then work in around the kids. And then throughout all of this, they've got a lot older and it's all got a lot easier. But it is, juggling school holidays and juggling pickups and drop-offs and school clubs. And it's enabled me, as hard as it's been at times and as unpredictable as it's been financially, it's enabled me to be able to drop my kids to school, pick them up from school, take them to their clubs, and actually spend that time with them. Because I just think, at the end of the day, what do we all want more of? And it's time. So I just actually, very fortunately, I feel like I managed to find a way to do that when they were little. And, when you home from school and they're 5, they tell you the most hilarious things. And I felt like I didn't miss out on that. And I felt, that I didn't. And then it's just in the past couple of years, it's just moved from the gym floor. And then I've started, a few of my clients moved away. So I started training them online. And then I started building online. And when I started building online, I was a bit fearful that because I wasn't in person with that person, and I wasn't, having that physical contact with them every week, that I wouldn't be able to get them the results, and I wouldn't be able to get to know them as well and have the relationship that I have, or that I had with my one-to-one in-person clients. But it's been just way beyond my expectations. The ladies that I coach online, they get awesome results. And I feel like I have a genuine relationship with them. We're on WhatsApp all the time. Like, I feel like I really know them, and we have a call before we start. And it's been brilliant. But this has now given me even more flexibility. And now with teenage kids who are even more independent and easier in the holiday. So it's been 10 years in the process. It's not sort of happened overnight, but it's definitely, it's growing in the direction I want it to go. So yeah.
I think it's a really interesting story, because so much of that is any parent that's trying to hold down a job and be a good parent. And it does tend to fall on a lot of women at the moment. I think more and more men are coming into this space, which is great. But it is so hard, isn't it? And I remember that always having to take very low paid jobs, which were, not jobs that I wanted because I needed that like 9 to 3. And it was,
Yeah.
kind of going in. I remember kind of dropping the kids off, powering into the town. I covered schools as a family worker, rushing around seeing all the clients, powering back, and just thinking if there's any traffic, I'm not going to be there. And I had a friend in the thing, I'd be like, if I'm not there at 3:30, can you grab the kids and walk them home? Because I knew that would be the time. And it's so tiring to have that kind of rat race. And I know, my eldest daughter has a, little 2-year-old, and that whole kind of get them to childmind and then get to work and they get back and then they're tired. And so it's so lovely, isn't it, when you can move over to doing that yourself. One of the questions that I was thinking was, as you said, you didn't have a big career in mind. You weren't kind of particularly career motivated. How did you find the actual kind of aspect of building a business? Because I think that often puts people off from doing it. They're kind of, well, I don't know how to do accounting and I don't know how to do marketing and I don't know how to. How did that sort of come to you?
I didn't know how to do any of it. I don't think I even had that thought. It was a bit like, yeah, let's do that. Okay. And then as you do that, the questions come in and then you solve them as they come in. So I mean, social media back then, I didn't know what the hell I was doing. Like I'm still figuring it out now because it's an ever changeable thing. I mean, it changes like the wind, social media. But one of my clients actually asked me a question once and she really made me think because I hadn't thought about it. And it's a really similar question that you've just asked. And she said to me, like, right, so you set this up with really young kids and you qualified and da da da. And she was like, but did you ever think, like, God, what if it doesn't work? And I was like, oh, no, because it had to. Like, I never thought this can't work. It was like, well, this is my option. And it's not without its melt. It's phone calls to my best friend, like crying my eyes out, my snotty walks with my partner where I'm just like, like, when you're just like, it's not without its challenges and difficulties. And sometimes I think, God, it would be easier to be salaried and employed. But I have so much love for what I do now. I can't not do it. So yeah, I just learned as I've gone on. Like I qualified and then I would go on a course and I met a guy called Aidan on this day course thing that a friend of mine had mentioned. And then Aidan and I would stay in touch, and then he would mention another course. And then I would go to another event with him for anything from, how to train people, like the actual education in the science behind the training, or it would be a nutrition day, or it would be, how to do social media. And actually then years later, I ended up on a course with Aidan about growing and a sort of online course. And then I think it was like the top 8 people in that course who were the top 8 earners of their group coaching got to go to Ibiza. And then a group of us went out to Ibiza. So Aidan was there. And then I met like loads of people who I'm still in touch with in the industry who are doing incredible things and who are so successful. And just like a couple of months ago, I messaged a guy who was in Ibiza called Josh, who's done incredibly well online. And I just said to him, have you got a coach at the moment? Like, how are you getting all of this success? You're incredibly busy. You've grown your social media. And he said, have you heard of this course? And I was like, no. So then I enrolled in that course last year. And then that really helped me grow my social media. So I just think it's one of those things that you just have to know where you want to be, but you don't have to know every single step to get there because it will just happen. And I find myself, if I start panicking about the future, if I think, oh, but I want to achieve X, but oh my God, I'd need this. How would I do that? I'm like, chill out, because it's not happening tomorrow. It's going to happen in another year's time. Like you've got plenty of time to out how to deal with the other elements that are going to come in. And I know how to do a tax return. I didn't know I was doing, but went onto the government website, did a lot of reading, asked a lot of friends, like found out how people did it. And I think making contacts along the way, and obviously social media helps because you start following people, and that's why you would then go to their talk or their education day. And I definitely learned more after I qualified. So I got my level 3 qualification, and then I joined an academy, and then I've done so many different like education days and learning various things. And if there's something I don't know that someone else is doing very well, if I know them or if I don't, I will obviously, now with social media it's so easy, you can send someone a message, but I will find out where they've gone to be successful in that area and do they recommend that person. So I don't feel like I'm in the dark as much now as I was at the beginning, because I've got so many contacts. Like, you just
Mm.
meet people and you're like, well, how have you grown that? Oh, I did so and so's course. Oh, I've been following this coach, or oh, I've got him from accountability. So you're like, oh, okay, like, so
Yeah.
it becomes a
Yeah.
lot. But and I'm sure I've moved a lot slower than a lot of other people, but in amongst that, I've been juggling, adjusting to single mum life and bringing up two children. So I have that awful
Yeah.
thing, compare myself to other people.
Mm.
And a lot of the people I compare myself to don't have children. And I'm like, you just can't do it. But I am really guilty of doing it all the time. And I'm like, but they're so successful and they've done this and they get clients. And then I'm like,
Mm.
they don't do school drop off and pick up. They don't have hormonal teenage rages to deal with. They don't have dinners to cook for kids. They've got every single hour of every single day, and you don't. Like, they don't stand at football sidelines on a Saturday. I love doing that, by the way. But, they have that time.
Yeah.
So I just think a lot
Yeah.
of the time, I think especially for women, we need to just lay off ourselves a little bit, because I think we do give ourselves quite a hard time. I'm really guilty of that in my business.
Mm. It's really interesting. It's such a familiar story to me, and there's so much I want to come back on actually. So I think I've just been reading a book. You've probably heard of it, Rich Dad Poor Dad. And while I don't love that he's a fan of Donald Trump, I get what he's saying, which is that actually Trump goes, "I'm going to do that," and then pretty much does. But actually, one of the things that the kind of final chapter that I was just reading is that he says, you know, um, actually what you should be doing is learning. And he says, go on every course, go on. And he says, don't just go to a broker and go, I think I want to buy some stocks. Like, go on a course that helps you understand what the broker should do and what they're going to do. And so it's just so interesting that you're like, I went on this course and this course and this course. And I think I absolutely see that. I actually love learning about how businesses run as much as running my own business. And I think that shows up in my work, because obviously then whether it's people in senior leadership or people starting their own businesses, that's some of the coaching that I do is literally, let's look at LinkedIn, let's look at social media, what's your brand, and all of that sort of stuff as well, to a level that I feel that I'm capable of doing. But like you, I have a huge referral circle where I can kind of go, what's this and what's that? And for me, definitely, I would say I've probably not gone as many courses, but I read and I watch and I ask, and I think that's really interesting, because I do think a lot of people go into to business, especially sole traders actually, and then they kind of learn the tiny bit they need to, or they sit and panic. And it's absolutely, you're right about being curious, because I look at your social media and I think, she's really good. Like, her videos are really good and she's on all the time. And you've really inspired me to kind of think I really should be doing some more videos, because they're so clear and they're so concise and they're so sharp. And I really don't watch a lot of social media. So the fact that I stopped, that's how obviously I found you for this podcast, was watching you and thinking, I like her. She's really clear and she's really concise, and you're really funny. And I just think you're really down to earth and really real. That certainly is what appeals to me. Is we were talking before the podcast started about the amount of chocolate that I've certainly eaten over Christmas, and I just loved that one where you were like, "Have you eaten all of this?" There's a huge bar of chocolate on the table. And I was like, a lot of fitness trainers, they're not being honest about that. They're kind of just going, "Come on, it's January, let's get back," rather than going, "If you put weight on, what have you been eating?" It's like A equals B kind of thing. So I think that's really interesting that you're constantly on a learning journey. And so that doesn't surprise me, now understanding kind of where you are on social media and where you've built your business to, that you're a learner, and that's going to keep growing and keep growing and keep growing for you. And so I hope that kind of really inspires other people watching it, thinking, how do I do it? Because you're totally right. I mean, I find it's funny that you learn it as you're on the job, and then I talk to friends who are not in business at all, and I say something which to me is like ABC, and they're like, well, what's that? And I almost want to go, what? Don't you know what that is? Or how, I think it was one of my kids sent me, and they're all adults, sent me a picture of Stephen Bartlett. And they said, you should find this guy and ask him to come on your podcast. I just sort of burst out laughing. And I was like, that's Stephen Bartlett. Do you not know who he is? And they kind of went, no, and I'm just like, where have you been? But of course it's not their thing. So I think there's a real thing, isn't there, with people who are like, oh, I'd kind of like to sell this product or do this service or whatever. I don't know how to run a business, so obviously I can't do that. And then they go and look for somebody to work for, rather than actually starting that thing themselves. So I find it kind of really fascinating, your journey into business. But kind of moving on for that, you've really started to invest in women and perimenopause, haven't you? And the kind of education of that. Why? I mean, I know obviously you're a woman, but what led you to feel so passionate about that? And kind of, yeah, what kind of tips can you give my listeners? What things do you think people are not really aware of?
I think it's evolved, like as my business has evolved, that has evolved. Because as I've got older, I've attracted older clients, and then training mums,
Mm,
we're all suddenly middle-aged and we've all got kids, and they were my client base. And as that has grown, like, and clients
mm,
myself have got older, along come all of these hormonal changes. And as my women were going through these various things, I just sort of started to think like, well, how on earth have we just been training as little men and not looking at our hormones? And it made it really obvious to me that you can't train women without knowing their menstrual cycles. So it just,
yeah.
from that into then the perimenopause, into then post menopause, and
Mm,
I just find it fascinating. So I was loving, like, obviously coaching women anyway, and I would have some women who would turn up to their sessions and they were just like drained. Like, I could tell you when one of my clients from years ago was on her period, because she would turn up and I'm like, are you okay?
mm,
She's just like, but you have to be able to have that conversation, I think, with
mm,
women, and
mm,
with especially with someone who's coaching you, especially when it's one to one, have to be able to talk about, you know,
mm.
or I suppose what was deemed the gross stuff. Like,
Yeah.
I often would say to my ladies, do you want to not do squats? We can leave out anything that's just going to put way too much pressure, and like a load of, you just don't want, like, to feel like
Mm,
something's going to go horribly wrong in your session if you're on your period. So I think it's that
mm,
level of relationship, honesty, talking to women the whole time and working with women. And obviously, being a woman, I can feel the changes myself. And then the more you learn, the more you're like, how on earth do we not get taught this at school? Like, how on earth is this not just how,
yeah.
how we're not governing our lives around this stuff? It seems a bit wild. But
Mm,
yeah, I do think that's just evolved in terms of the women that I coach and the age range that I coach, and just learning more about it and having access to these brilliant women like Dr. Louise Newson and Dr. Mary Claire Haver. There's Dr. Kelly Casperson. Like, they put out such brilliant information on female, obviously, reproductive health and
mm,
perimenopause, postmenopause, and just they're sort of empowering women with all this knowledge. And so I've learned a huge amount from them. I've bought all their books. I've got stacks of books on menopause in my house. But I find it really fascinating.
yeah.
You're saying about always learning, and I know people always say, oh, if you do a job you love, you don't work a day, and blah blah. It isn't kind of, you do,
Mm,
you put in all that,
mm,
but
mm,
I'm learning, and the hours that I put in towards what I'm doing, I absolutely love it. Like, I find it, the more I've learned about perimenopause and menopause, I just cannot believe that we're not taught this, and I find it absolutely fascinating. So I
mm,
love the fact that then women can come to me and they're like, look, I'm totally stuck. I've gained all of this body fat. This isn't my,
mm,
I feel horrendous, but I can give them the information as to like what their hormones are doing, give them a level of understanding, and then help them with all the other stuff.
mm,
So yeah, it's evolved, but I
mm,
love it. And it was just the other year that I was like, why am I having all these conversations about hormones and not putting this on social media? So it's putting that out on social media that has really helped grow my following in the past year as well.
mm. Yeah, I noticed. I mean, there was one of them, I can't remember what it was you were talking about. I think it was one of the first I saw of yours, and you were talking something about vaginas. And I was just like, whoa, okay, like that's really,
That's about right.
that's you like no one talks about that. And I just remember thinking, yeah, I really like this person. I can really associate with her, that she's just being brutally honest. I'm always told I'm brutally honest. But I think it's really fascinating because my oldest daughter is only 17 years younger than me, because I had her very young, and she's looking at me having a horrendous time, just going, oh my God, and I said to her, part of the reason I'm really educating myself is like you. Obviously, I have also female clients, but I also have a lot of male clients who say, my wife this, or my partner, or my sister, or whatever, and are eager to learn and understand it because they're seeing this change, and it's huge for them. And I know I had a client the other day, and he said something like, it was a little bit offhand, not, and he didn't mean it to be, but a kind of, my wife's struggling with menopause, and I stopped him and I said, don't ever underestimate how damaging it is. Because, for me, it's almost felt like an identity shift from I'm very
Mm.
strong and I'm very capable and all of this stuff to not feeling that. Obviously, weight gain, partly from chocolate, but, partly from, everything being different. And it's funny, I was going through some clothes, we all have those clothes under the bed that we're going to slim back into,
Yeah.
and giving them to my daughter who's 20 and just saying to her, take what you want. And we found a mini skirt that I'd worn. Now, interestingly, I'd worn it when I was 23, post 3 children. So it wasn't a kind of pre-kids mini skirt. And honestly, it was so tiny, and it's a kind of, it's not stretchy. So I was looking at this mini skirt going, that was like really comfortable on my waist, and it's tiny to the point where you're like, that's not a real waist measurement. And I put it up on my thigh, and it fitted one thigh with like a little bit extra. And my daughter just went, "You can't have been that slim." And I am actually a really petite person. Just life and stress and work and chocolate and kids and menopause, and but it kind of inspired me to go, I need to kind of get fit and healthy again. But I think it is having people who understand you both in and out of the workplace, isn't it? And like, I loved your phrase there. What was it you said? We can't keep training like mini men.
Yeah.
Because I think there is that, and I have that as well. Like I said, I go to the gym and I think, the men are going to be looking at my little 5 kilos, but that is a real strain for that muscle on me currently. And sometimes I look at men and they're pulling these huge weights, and actually they haven't got perfect form. You can see their bodies straining. And I think you are moving that weight, but you're really moving that in a way that's not healthy for your body. Like, you're not holding form because you're so desperate to like
Mm.
lift this heavier weight. And they're like almost wedging themselves against the machine to like, and I'm like, that's not how that machine's meant to be used.
Ego
But
lift.
so I find it absolutely fascinating. But I think that, like you said, that, why is no one talking about this stuff? And we need to be, is so important. And I know I used to have a PT in the village, and I could arrive in floods of tears and she'd just go, let's put the gloves on, and we'd start boxing. It's so important for women, isn't it? We train so differently.
And I think the mental impact of perimenopause is huge. And I think that's sometimes very underestimated. We look at all the physical symptoms and how, you're gaining body
Yeah.
fat, your hot flashes and all the classic things. But I think,
Mm,
and like you were saying, how it impacts everybody, and every male
mm,
is going to be
mm,
impacted somehow, whether he's heterosexual and married to a woman or not. He's going to have a mother, he's going to potentially have a sister, he's going to have female friends, he might have nieces.
mm,
Everybody around everybody is going to go through like either a medical or
mm,
natural menopause.
yeah.
And I think it's really important that we understand the sort of magnitude of it and how we can help women the most.
Mm,
Obviously, my help is focused on diet,
mm,
exercise, health, well-being, and a lot of women get to perimenopause and they have spent their entire lives just giving to their family, bringing up their children, working their career, juggling everything, drowning in the whole thing, not having had any time to take for themselves or feel that they can justify to prioritize themselves. And then you end up you're then in the pits of perimenopause, your kids are in the pits of hormonal teenage years, you've given everything to
yeah.
everybody, just completely lost yourself, and then you're losing
Mm,
yourself further because of your hormone decline. And I think it can be a really, really tough place. So I
mm,
love it. Like, it's, if you were to choose
mm,
as a trainer,
mm,
what kind of demographic do you want to choose? It's probably the hardest one to coach because there's so
yeah.
much going on, but I find it utterly fascinating. And
Mm.
yeah.
I agree with you. I remember looking at symptoms, and it was something like there were 35 symptoms of menopause, perimenopause. And this was like a couple of years ago. And I said to my daughter, "Oh, I've got 31 of those." And my PT used to call perimenopause the gift that keeps on giving, and just every time I came with some little ailment, or I'd pulled something, or I'd hurt, and it was just, I went from being somebody who just had not had a cold for 10 years to being somebody who was almost continuously unwell. And it does it. For me, certainly, the physical side of it has been nothing. I mean, almost I wouldn't have noticed, is what I would say. But the psychological side of it, I have PMSD, so severe syndrome anyway. But the psychological side of, I don't know my identity anymore. How much energy do I have anymore? I mean, we were joking before the podcast. I've been to the gym this morning, and it took me almost as long as I spent at the gym, to persuade myself to go to the gym. I never had that when I was younger, and so I think there's a real identity shift that I think men don't understand. They are starting to understand the physical side of it, but I think there's an identity shift, a tiredness, a fatigue, a loss of feeling like who you are that I think men actually don't understand as much. Certainly, and I see that in my close friends who are really pro women and pro supporting their wives. I think there's just, it's almost like they've heard that, oh, okay, you can bleed more and you might have hot flushes, but they haven't heard that you might not even understand who you are anymore. And I think it's so true.
Yeah, no fault to men because they don't have to have periods. But I just think there are situations in life that women have gone through over 300 times by the time they get to perimenopause that men just physically and mentally wouldn't be able to cope with. Like, one of my friends had this the other day, bless her. She got up in the morning, she changed her tampon, she put in a pad because she was like, I've got to get the train to London. She dropped her son at nursery, she got on the train, she got to work. She had gone through everything, even through to her trousers. They were black, fortunately, but she said the material they were, you could see the blood. She went into the disabled toilet, she washed her trousers, she was in there for like 20 minutes. She dried her trousers in the hand dryer. Fortunately, they have very nice hand dryers in there. She literally had to mop herself clean, and then she stood on stage in front of 200 people and presented. What man could physically cope with that? Like, but we dealt that hand from sometimes the age of 10, so like, around the age of 12. Like, that's a lot for a girl to take on. And I just think you manage that your whole life, just being told, oh, get on with it. Oh, it's painful. Yeah, there's a load of blood. Oh, I mean, I can't tell you the amount of, times I've bled through things and I think, Christ, I've had like 300 periods. How have I not got this down? But you can't, like, you're just out of control of your body. And I don't think men ever have that experience of completely out of control of their body. So as much as, they can be very supportive, and they're never going to get it. And not because, I'm being a raging feminist. They can't fully understand.
I agree. And I think, I think obviously boys go through puberty where they get unwanted erections and things. Maybe that's the closest of lack of control. But I agree with you. And I think I'm always amazed when I see women wearing white. I never invest in white pants and I never invest in white clothing. Genuinely because I'm also a bit of a messy eater, I'm going to be honest. But, I just look at white things and think, why have you bought a white coat? Like, that's insane. But I think it is interesting. Just like you said, we grew up with it and we are taught to expect it. And I think it's only now people are starting to say, oh, you don't have to be in huge amounts of agony, or you don't have to, and I think, I think certainly the men I know are doing their best to kind of almost learn and study and try and help in any way they can. But I think an identity crisis, like, how do you help with that when it is hormonal? And I saw a sort of private specialist in the end, and I think, I would sometimes go to her and go, I don't know if this is what's going on in my life, or I don't know if this is just age, or I don't know if I'm just tired, or I don't know. Is the fact that I'm feeling really chronically low, or I'm tired, or I'm not on it, or, and I know in my life, I have these moments where it's like someone's given me, a tablet and I've just got infinite amounts of energy, and I'm in working till 8 and I'm full of energy. And you probably, if I did do social media videos, you'd probably see it, and I'm completely on it, and then suddenly I'm not, and it's like, am I ever going to have that stage again? And it makes it very hard, I think, to plan. So I will suddenly sort of take on a lot and then think, but I have to be aware that if I'm really tired, I still have to do that thing. And so I think it's just huge on an identity basis. And I think that's the thing I would sort of say to men is, this is not just a physical thing. Really, it's the identity that can be huge. But, sorry, go on.
I was just going to say, it makes life just very unpredictable for women. Like, they want to go and enjoy the event that you're all potentially going to. But then if you feel like you're a bit detached from what's going on, you might seem a little bit distant or disinterested, but you don't mean to. You just haven't got it's so complex. It's really complex. And the support needs to be huge, I think, for if you have a wife going through it, or a girlfriend, or a sister, or a mother, like, the support needs to be huge. And one thing I'm not doing is hiding any of this from my kids, and especially my son. He's in the background when I'm filming the stuff, so he picks up all these words, and sometimes he just comes out with them, hilarious, because they're like completely out of context.
Brilliant.
Say random things. I'm like, I am so pleased that you have been exposed to all of these words, like periods and menopause and pads and emotions and hormones and progesterone and testosterone. He doesn't really quite know what the hell it all means, but I just think it's going to make him a much more, I hope, if he is heterosexual, a supportive partner when he's older, and one that isn't going to be sort of freaked out by anything. Kids are going to understand that, you know, women be on a cycle, and that means that their emotions on a cycle. They handle things is going to be on a cycle. And I think if you learn your partner's cycle, and then you can learn that through perimenopause, you're winning there, because you will know when she is mentally resilient. You know when she can have those tough conversations. You'll know when you need to just leave her alone and back it up.
It's really, that's really an interesting one. One of the first things I get any female clients to do who are having any problem at all is chart their cycle. And I always just say to them, if you chart it and you can find a pattern, and I mean, kind of, I'm on this journey myself, you know, you'll know when to book in to give talks, you'll know when to, you know, to book in to do things. You know, I have migraines always 3 days a week, and sometimes I end up just completely cancelling clients because I don't know quite when it is at the moment. And I think I always say to people, if you can get to learn it, then you know, right, that's, you know, that's my on week, and I'm just going to book everything in that week. You know, that week I'm almost going to disappear from, you know, from observation and spend a lot of it resting. And I think it's so hard. And I know what you were saying earlier, kind of reflecting on building your own business, that comparison, because, you know, I've certainly watched people kind of, you know, who frankly are not nearly as qualified as me or experienced, just whiz up, you know, and build a business much quicker. And I was really lucky that I knew a woman who worked for a guy who I had watched doing this. And I said, how is he doing that? And she said, oh, he doesn't have a partner, and he doesn't have kids, and he works 18-hour days. And I kind of went, oh, okay. And I was, at least, I always, whenever I'm doing that comparison thing, I step back and go, you don't know what help someone's got, you don't know their story, you don't know what's going on. You know, I have 5 adult kids and a grandson, and they all have stuff going on. And so there's almost always something, you know, and very much I'm in a space where I'm now trying to look after myself, lose my weight, get healthy, get sleep. And I don't want to work an 18-hour day. Actually, that's not my life goal. And so I think it is really important that we don't compare ourselves to other people, both men and women, because there's a lot of men out there. I mean, most of my clients actually are men who come to me saying, you know, I've had my head down working for 20, 30 years. I'm trying to be there for my kids. I'm trying to be there for my partner. You know, I'm overweight. I've stopped going to the gym. I'm eating junk. And they're, you know, having a similar journey to women, obviously in a different way. And they're almost kind of lifting their heads up going, what am I doing this for? Like you know, I'm just rushing to work. I'm rushing home. I'm exhausted. I'm not enjoying anybody. While I'm, you know, bathing my kids, I'm thinking about work. While I'm at work, I'm thinking about my kids. And it is so important, isn't it? And I think, to kind of come back to fitness, I think certainly my experience of being fitter has been stronger. And I always choose a kind of word for the year. And last year it was health, and I kind of did a lot on it, but not what I wanted to. And this year, actually, I was like, oh, do I choose health again? And I actually chose strength as my word of the year, because I thought actually that's strength in identity, strength in but strength in my body, but strength in my mindset. And for me, I love the fact that, you know, one of the things you said was I started exercising and I got mentally strong, because it is this really fascinating correlation, isn't it, between mental strength and physical ability.
I didn't know it existed until it happened. I just didn't know. And then I was like, I feel amazing. And then I was like, I feel like I can take on all of this shit. Want to bring me some more shit? You know, when you're just like, yeah, I can handle this.
I'm so strong.
But it changed my life. Like, it genuinely changed my life. And I think that was the thing that I wanted all women to experience. So if, you know, you have really poor health and poor body confidence, and you're holding too much body fat, just all of those things will get better if you remain consistent with your training, and the consistency with your training will lead to strength, and that will just lead to all of this mental strength. And then it takes you to like a different, it's not even a different mindset, like a different mind. You're just like, yeah. And then you just feel you're just more, I don't know, you're more able to take on more things. You're more mentally resilient, I think.
Yeah.
And that's what you lose in perimenopause as well. You lose mental resilience. Our estrogen drops. Our brains need a lot of estrogen. I think it all makes a lot of sense when you understand the science behind what our hormones do, the impact they have on all the different parts of our bodies, which we're never looking at. Why would we need to know that? But yeah, and I agree with you about tracking and trying to find patterns, because it can make things make a lot more sense, I think, as much as you can't control.
Yeah. And I love actually that you were saying, you know, actually it's really important it can really be helpful for partners. And I know certainly having PMSD, which is if anyone who doesn't know, it's like a severe premenstrual syndrome. My partners would 100% have in their diary when I was going to hit my period, because 10 days before that I'd be the horrible evil person for about 2 hours, and they would be like, oh, it's coming up today, and they just kind of wouldn't respond, wouldn't react, would let me just kind of explode. And actually over time they were able to help me manage it, because I wouldn't always see it. So they would then say things like, what day is it? And like, do you think you're feeling more intense about the situation? Or, do you just want to have a hug and a cuddle? Or we'd just make sure that evening was like film watching evening. We didn't talk about anything. It was like literally, because I could at that point chart it to the day. So it was like that day, I keep away from everybody. I try not to kind of work on that day. And we watch a film, so we're not even speaking, and then we go to bed, and I just knew I'd wake up and it would have gone. And I think that is the potency sometimes of hormones that maybe men don't understand, is that it literally can be, I've felt my mood kind of do that, and then 2 hours later just come back up again, and it's just it's that intense sometimes. So but I think I could talk to you about this stuff for ages, but we're kind of pushing to time, and I want to ask you my 3 questions that I ask all guests. So looking back at your that personal journey that you did, kind of getting fit and getting healthy, and getting to this amazingly strong place that you're in now, was there a kind of book, film, or a piece of music that helped you through that time?
So when I got a divorce and we first moved out, and the kids were really little, they were like 5 and 2, and all I had was like a little bit of savings, and it was 6 months rent. So I paid it up front because I didn't earn enough to cover the rental. So like I just said, would the landlord accept 6 months? And they were like, yeah. So it was all just like everything was on a knife edge. Everything was just a little bit up in the air. And I watched 2 films, and I watched them over and over and over, because they just, I find comfort in repetition sometimes. So with certain films, I'll feel like they're like, putting on a nice pair of pajamas. Like it's cozy. So I watched Bridesmaids, and I watched Pitch Perfect. I think it was Pitch Perfect 1, but I watched them just all the time. And it like, on a DVD, like it was so old school. But I'd watched them whilst eating pancakes and Ben and Jerry's chocolate fudge brownie ice cream before my skin went wild and I had to give up the dairy. But yeah.
I have to say, I think Bridesmaids is a fantastic film, because it shows humanness, doesn't it, at all its rawest states, jealousy and fear of rejection, and failure. And I think it's an absolutely brilliant film, and Pitch Perfect I love anyway, because I love singing. But absolutely fantastic. If somebody is listening today thinking, oh, that's all really resonated, what's a tip for somebody that they could do today that would just help them?
You don't need to know exactly how you're going to get there. You just want to know where you want to go. So look, what is the phrase? You travel in the direction that you're looking. So you don't need to know exactly every single, step to get you to that point. You just need to know where you want to go, and then just believe that you can do it. Because I didn't know anything about business or accounting. I didn't know anything about social media. I didn't know anything about anything. Everything evolves. And one thing I heard, a saying that I heard that I really love, is that everything is figure outable. So you will be sat there thinking, but I'm an intelligent human, and if that human could do it, why can't I do it? Well, you can. You just have to figure it out along the way, because it's not all going to come at once. It will sort of snowball. And and if you want it and you're passionate about it and you enjoy it, then you will make it happen.
That's really, I love that. I totally agree with that. Just start, really, isn't it? Just start somewhere. And I think somebody gave me, which I nearly didn't read because obviously it's quite low level for me personally, was Michael Mosley's Just One Thing book. And it just goes through these things that are scientifically backed, have a sing, cold shower. But one of them was do 20 squats in the morning and 20 push-ups. And he called them intelligent exercises. And he was saying they move blood from your brain to your body or something. And obviously I've instantly forgotten the science. But and I just started doing that. There I was, still eating chocolate, still not sleeping at the right time. And I just thought, that takes me 1 minute to do. Sometimes I'm sitting in here and I think, oh, I forgot to do it, and I just stop and I lean against the wall. I do wall push-ups at the moment, and I just do it. And I think I love that kind of just start, just make a start on doing something. It's great.
It isn't without self-doubt and imposter syndrome. It isn't without all of those, phone calls and breakdowns and tears and snot. Like, it isn't without that, because you're only human and you are going to compare yourself. Have to bring yourself back onto your path. Like, I can get very easily distracted on social media, and I'm like, they're doing, they do that, they're doing that,
Yeah.
they're doing that, they've got millions of views, they need to do that. And then I'm like, right, actually, what do I want people to learn from me? What do I want people to come to me to learn? What do I want them to leave knowing? I'm like, right, focus on that. Like, stop getting
Yeah.
distracted, stay
Stop panicking.
in lane. Yeah. So yeah, it's not without
Yeah.
it. Like, that's really normal and really natural.
Yeah.
Just have good friends that you can cry on all the time. You'll be fine.
I love that. I love that. All good films. And so my third question would be, if you were standing in front of the world leaders today, what would you say to them?
I'd ask them all to stand down, I think, right now, if I'm honest with you. I don't think they're doing anything that's helping the climate, anything that's helping the survival of the human race. I feel like we are run by very power mad, incredibly greedy men who have generational wealth, do not need any more, and are doing nothing for the good of anyone other than themselves. That is a very negative answer to you today, I'm afraid.
Yeah. It's very interesting, isn't it? I was saying to a friend, I thought that instead of having words like president and prime ministers, we should have caretaker, and the role should be caretaker, and that might help anybody, male, female, actually understand this is about caretaking for your community, your country, for the world. And actually, maybe if it didn't come with this big title of president or prime minister, or that actually maybe it might not make it so appealing to the people that maybe shouldn't be in power. But Hannah, thank you so much. Honestly, I feel like I could sit down and talk to you for hours and hours on end. But keep doing your wonderful videos. And how can people find you if they're kind of going, oh, what videos? I want to hear her say vagina. How do they find you?
Say the word discharge, so come for that. And thank you for all the lovely words that you said. Thank you for having me on your podcast. So I am on social media as Eton Fitness, so Eton Fitness. So it's just at Eton Fitness. I'm on Facebook, Instagram, and the wild west that is TikTok. I'm probably way too old for, but I'm on it anyway.
Brilliant. That's great. And obviously we'll put all of the links into the show notes. So if anyone forgets that, that's fine. But Hannah, thank you again. Thank you so much for your time, and I really appreciate it.
Thank you so much for having me. I've really enjoyed it. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Mary Williams, as you know, and thank you so much for listening to the Alternative Leader podcast. I search for guests to bring you lessons and learnings that can help move you forward in your life, help you achieve the success that you want to, in whatever way that shows up for you, to help you lead powerfully, whether that's in your own life, as your parenting, your personal, or your professional, and make you the best that you can be. If you've enjoyed the show, please rate and review it, and please share it with as many people as you think also want to move forward and gain success in their lives. If you want to find out more about me, go over to my website, which is www.mary-williams.com. That's www.mary, which is MARI-Williams.com, and you'll find links to all of my social media profiles there. There's also a Facebook community that you can join, and again, all the links will be on the website too. I hope you have an absolutely fantastic day, and thank you so much for listening.